So Doug, you lead us in. We're gonna do a clap just for some sort of reference.
Roger.
And Doug, you start us off.
Okay, clap. Hey everybody, welcome back to Talk Story Unscripted. My name is Doug, and over here we have
Pete.
And down here we have
Juan Devevo.
Also known as Juan.
That's right.
Yes.
He is
Juan the Devastator. That's it. Juan the Devastator.
I like it.
I'm telling you.
Wow,
Change that on your birth certificate.
that would be awesome.
Juan is one of the founding members of Casting Crowns, and he is here joining us to talk about some fun stuff today. And you have your awesome setting in the background. By the way, I love. It's not wallpaper that I'm seeing those logs on the wall. Is that correct?
They're logs. They're real logs.
My heart.
Wow.
Oh,
Look at that. That's so cool.
I love it. Can you show the
We
audience?
built a cabin. We downsized and we built a cabin. So
Can you show the audience the chandelier that's hanging above there? That is so cool. Look at that thing. Oh man, how fun!
You know what stinks is we're not in the. If we were in the living room, Melody, for some reason, she'll get a thing. My wife, Melody, she'll get a thing in her head. We were in our old house. She wanted a lion rug, so she found one of those. And then we moved into here. For some reason, the word cabin meant that we should have a moose head hanging from the wall. So we got a big moose head over there.
I love it. So did you keep the lion rug too?
We got it. Yep.
So you got a lion rug and a moose head, dude. You're officially in a cabin.
Under the piano.
That's great. That's great. Hey, so Juan, you are a guitar player. Let's talk a bit about that. How long have you been playing, and how did you pick up guitar?
Okay, so the secret to guitar players is they never want to tell you how long they've been playing.
That's true.
You always want to make it sound like, I've been like 6 months. I've been playing for like 6 months.
Isn't that true?
You actually sound like you're supposed to. But when I tell you I started when I was 14, so that would be 26 years ago.
So then you got people who will say, wow, really that long? You figure you'd be better than you are now.
Exactly. That's why you want to hide. You sandbag it. You don't want to hide your numbers.
I learned this yesterday. I don't know. Am I doing it okay?
Yeah, I think that. It's natural. Well, actually, and that's a good question, actually, because some people with my photography, and Doug, you've actually said this. Oh, Pete, you're so talented, and I don't. None of that stuff to me is natural. You know what I mean? It's like you have to. To me, I feel like you need a passion. If you get a passion for something, you put the time in, right? Whether it's guitar playing or whether it's photography or filmmaking or writing or stand up. We'll get into that later. You know, you get passionate about something. Would you agree with that, or am I being so?
That's a good word because I think maybe it's the passion that leads you to work, that make this. You want to work, you want to do this thing, and that automatically makes you better. And you have talent that I think that makes you lean towards that passion. And there's little things that, you know, there's talents that can go any way. Like photography can be the talents that you have to be good at photography can be used in a bunch of different venues, you know?
Yeah.
So, but that's a good word. I think, if you're passionate at something, that's going to lead you to do the work. That's what everybody doesn't understand too. It's like, I want to do this thing. And you're like, okay, well, you got to work at it. And like, I don't want to do that. It was like, well, that's not what you're meant to do. You're go do something else that you're willing to work, you know?
Right. No, I like what you said there. That's interesting that you can have like a natural affinity in a certain, or not affinity, a natural gifting in a certain area, but it's not like I have a natural gifting for blind making and fake tree making. That's my natural gift. But it's just creative or whatever it is that you have, and then that can be applied in whatever avenue that God kind of takes you down. And then I love this fact of it is that you enjoy the art of music, guitar playing, and then your motivation is to honor God and to share the message of Christ with people. So those two combined, that makes you want to even get even better and better, right? Beyond just the art itself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because then, we're worried too. Not worried, but we're most focused on the message. What are we saying? and we want people to understand that, and we want people to walk away from our music not thinking about our music. We want them to think about God.
Dude, that's a great point, man.
That's true. Even in photography, that's interesting because I always tell new people, like these days with digital photography, there's a lot of effort into the post-production of things, right? So you're working on your art, you're pulling out, Ansel Adams says, you don't take a photo, you make a photo, which I totally agree with. So you're working on an image you took, you captured it. That's the first bit. You want to capture it good, and there's a technical aspect to that. And then you go through and you create it. But the real secret is you make sure it's still realistic. You know what I mean? There's still people can still hang on to it. If it's so unrealistic, you look fake. Unless, of course, you're doing that on purpose. There's that aspect, too. I want to do something so absurd that it's obviously,
right,
not real.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what's cool. Even with the impressionistic painters,
yes,
they capture something human, and that's what I think you're saying is you're capturing this part of humanity that we can share with people with photography. So
right,
yeah,
or nature.
Yeah.
And
I found that, it's interesting, like thinking about music, there's a technical aspect to music. There's a technical aspect to photography. Whatever you might be doing, there's technical things that you have to know and learn, and even, and I'm talking about structure, right? So you can't just have a free form song structure if you're doing a ballad and you're doing something that, or throwing ballad lyrics on top of something that is definitely not ballad style. It's not going to work, So you have to think about how structure works and that type of thing in order. And then ultimately, we're all telling a story. So for you guys with Casting Crowns, you guys are sharing a story. And speaking of which, do you guys have like I can't think of a better word, but like a filter? It's like, hey, we are Casting Crowns, and this is what we want to represent, or what's the word? We want to make sure we hit these things, right? Do you guys have something like that, like a vision statement or something?
Well, yeah, not a vision statement. I think in a way, all of our music is connected with the ministry that we're doing. I think it speaks to a lot of people because it was people that we were speaking to when we're at our church. I'm usually around students. Mark will talk to the parents and students because Mark's on staff as the youth pastor. And so just through being with people and sharing in their lives, and then everybody, eventually will go through something, and then, or they'll go through a struggle, and then you want to be able to one, or maybe it's the lack of, you're talking to somebody and you didn't know what to say, and when you walk away from that, then that becomes what we want to tell people is like, look, I struggled with that too, or I had a friend and I wanted to know what to say to them, or I want to tell you something. So all those come from us just doing ministry, and that's why I think it comes out the way that it does, because it all is either our struggle or somebody else's struggle, or something that we think everybody needs to hear, or some kind of way that our prayer to God that we put into a song form, and then people who don't have those words can make that song their prayer too. That's kind of the way, the arena that we stay in.
I have a question. You guys have been a band. Casting Crowns has been a band for 21 years? What year are we in? 2020. So 21 years, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So 21 years of being a band and making a huge impact on the world. You could easily say that. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Making a huge impact on the world. When you talk about struggles that people going through in your church, as a unit of a band, how have you guys fought for unity and fought against the fiery arrows of the devil to divide you guys as a band? What has been your strong points of battle to maintain what God is doing through you guys as a group?
As far as like with each other, like staying as a family.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that's man, I tell you what. So like staying together is pretty hard for just bands. Any organization where you got people together, we have these different personalities. But we definitely do things to ensure that we're at least in each other's lives. So it'd be pretty easy to kind of just go our separate ways, come and play, and then go away again.
Right.
But we sound check every day at like 3, and then right when we're done, we all come together. We talk to each other. We kind of hang out for a second, but then one of us will share something from the Word, something that we're growing in, and then we'll pray with each other, and we'll pray over the concert, because that's kind of our focus. Isn't like we don't want to just have a good show. What we think of is people are coming in these doors and they have all of their deals. There's marriages that are coming in that are on the rocks, and there's teenagers that are coming in that are mad at their parents, and there's parents that are coming in that aren't relating to teenagers, and there's grandparents that are worried about stuff, and there's all people dealing with sicknesses and people who have lost loved ones. And so those are the people that we're thinking of when they're coming in the doors. And so we pray for them before they come in, so that God is realized sometime during that night. Because if we just make fans, that's going to go away. But if somebody leaves having encountered Jesus, then that's what our goal is, because that's who they need to be connected to anyway. That's the way we look at things.
Amen.
That's fantastic, man.
Why do you think music is so powerful? I mean, why can't somebody just stand up and tell people about Jesus? But yet, what's going on with
music? Why can't they talk? Yeah, Mark tells that joke a lot. He's like, he realized when he was a youth pastor, he could only hold their attention, the teenagers' attention, for like 3 minutes. Like, why not make a song? Yeah. Which is funny, because he's like, most of Crown songs are like 4 or 5 minutes still, even though we've condensed it down to a song form. I think, to answer it seriously, though, I think music disarms people. I think music is like a thing that we all identify with, no matter what your belief is. You can, because it's a common thread throughout all humanity, good, pleasing music draws you in. And then we can bring the truth inside of that. I think that's what Jesus did with parables, because everybody's like, hey, he was saying, hey, he would say, there's this sower, there's this farmer, and half the people there were farmers, or he'd talk to the guys about fishing, and half the guys there were fishermen, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that. And then he would say, and here's the truth. And that's kind of the way Mark is our principal writer, and that's the way he drops it in there, is he creates something familiar, good music, and then there's this story about a girl or somebody who's in church, or he'll put you right in Peter's place. That Peter the apostle is, who's looking at Christ and what his thoughts were, and he'll just say, and then here's the truth you can take away from it.
Love that.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. Doug, you have a question?
I do have a question. Thank you so much for asking if I have a question, because I do have a question.
All right. You have a question. You asked me a question. Ask a question.
So 21 years you guys have been a band, and you guys are constantly
stop bringing that up. So long. No,
that's like the guitar thing, man.
Yeah.
To me, it's endearing, because things don't, I don't know, man. Like you said, things that are built with people that have, everybody has other issues, things don't last forever. And so for 21 years, man, that's really cool in my book. So, but in all that time, me being a guy who doesn't know anything about music, I love music, but how you build music, I don't know. I can tell you about video stuff, but I can't tell you about music. Is it difficult to make new songs, write new lyrics for 21 years? Is there ever we're like, I don't know what else to talk about?
Exactly. Well, luckily, the thing is, like I said, Mark's the principal songwriter. Oh, and by the way, I do appreciate that you believe that we're good enough to have stuck around for 21 years. I'm not complaining about that part at all. But Mark's been writing most of the songs. And what's funny is if you've got anybody out there writing, is like when you get signed, you've had your whole life to write that first CD, but then you wrote that first album, but then you only got like a year to write that next album. So the second one, I think, was the one that was the most panicky for us. Because Mark's like, I don't churn these out. We'll do 10. He'll write. So something like, if you ever heard of Switchfoot, those guys walk in the door, they got 20 songs, and they're like, well, should we do this one or should we do this one? When we walk into the studio, we got 10 songs.
Wow.
And we're going to put those on the album. And sometimes Mark has written stuff in the studio. He's written choruses in the studio or a bridge. He walks in there and goes, I know the verse and the chorus, but I'm still working on the bridge. And we're like, well, we know what the music's like, so let's do the music. And then he'll write the bridge like while we're standing there. And that's a lot of it's God stuff. A lot of it is Mark having written songs he wrote 14. He was writing songs for the youth group before we even met him. So those were years and years of him practicing, like we said, a passion for writing songs. And so he was working his craft at that stuff too. So he's able to every year come up with 10 things to say.
Wow.
You know, and then, another good thing too is co-writing too. When you get to a certain point and you can find, like, if you're making videos and stuff, if you find somebody with a different perspective, that gives you a lot more room to play with, and it makes it easier. And you can come out saying something a little more profound, right? Sometimes when you have somebody that has a different point of view than just your one point of view the whole time, right?
Would you say that collaboration is a huge deal?
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. So for Mark, Matthew West has written a lot of songs with him, and the two big co-writers are Matthew West, and then a guy named Bernie Herms is Natalie Grant's husband. Bernie is he's a musical genius. So when Mark is kind of stuck in a thing, Bernie's like, well, what about this chord? And somehow that sparks something in Mark's brain, and it takes him down a whole different path he was thinking. So it's like, let's do this. Yeah, just like one note sometimes Bernie will play, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's genius. I can't believe it's that easy. That's for him.
And I think about all the literally, and I mentioned this in a previous podcast, so maybe you can help me go further down this rabbit hole. For all the billions of songs, literally billions of songs that have been written in humanity's time span, how do you go, oh, here's something new, G to D and then C? You know, how the heck does that happen?
Well, for Mark will walk in. He's really good at lyrics and melody, and so and then he kind of sometimes has a bass line that goes in there, so that helps us with chords. But as far as laying stuff in there, what's fun about a guitar player is these days, especially with digital music, we can just go in. The last album we recorded, it was just me, Josh, and another guy in a room, and we're like, well, let's play this. We take one song, and we would play 8 different guitars with it, and then I'm like, we'll let the producer pick one that he likes. Well, you just get there to sit there and just make stuff up all the time. Wow. But as far as what you said something too that made me think about, a lot of creative people think about originality. They want to be original about a thing. And I heard a C.S. Lewis quote that said, as long as you're honest, you know, and you try to tell the truth, you're honest to yourself and you try to tell the truth, you're going to be original, because every person is unique, you know? So we all have our own perspective. So as long as you're because a lot of times we try so hard to do something unique, but you're already doing something unique because nobody else is doing what you're doing. Yeah. Like if you're copying somebody, then that's not honest, right? That's not
right. No, that's so good. That reminds me of something my pastor told me years ago, and I hope he watches this. And he said, Dougie, we're not trying to be original, only genuine. And so that rings a bell for me. I had that written on a notebook like this somewhere. If you ever see the video we do, I have these on, and that one is burned into my skull. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good. And I love the aspect of the C.S. Lewis quote. You know, that the way to keep you in track in that way is your honesty. Yeah. Are you really representing who you are? You know, so that's really great. Well, you know, before we go too long, I have a question for you. So how did the name Casting Crowns come about?
We get asked that a lot. It's because it's not, I always wonder, I'm like, why do you want to know that? It's like, it's just the name of our band. But, you know, if I step back and think about it, it's not like the most obvious thing anyway. But we come from worship team. We were basically just a worship team anyway. So we were a worship team at our church, and we got to play at different places. Like we would play at FCA rallies, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, like a student-led organizations. So we go to high schools and play at that thing, and then we play at lock-ins and stuff. And you're like, "What's your name?" And we were like, at the time, we don't want to be First Baptist Church Daytona Beach Youth Group Praise Band.
Woo!
So with the idea of worship in our heads, there's a scripture in Revelation 4 that gives us that picture of what's going to happen when all evil's done away with and everything is made new. And so we're going to be there seeing Jesus face to face, and we have these rewards for living out a good life on the earth and while we're alive, and trying to tell people and spread love while we're going here. So we have awards, we have these crowns, and everybody in Revelation 4, including the elders and all the people around the throne of Christ, lay their crowns at Jesus' feet. It's like that's because everything and any good that we could have done came from Christ. And so we're going to pay that homage back to him, even though we've been rewarded with that when we get to heaven. So we thought about that and said, that's cool idea of worship, but that's in heaven. What about here? And it's like you can exercise that now. Is anything good that you have, anything good that comes your way is because of God, because Christ made that in you, and then you're creating it as a little, well, that's the word Christian, right? It means little Christ. So with Christ in you, you're able to create something that Jesus did while he was here, and you do a little bit of that, and you just go, well, it's only because of Christ. So I give him credit and all the glory. Yeah.
That's so cool, because I had wondered if that was what it was when I just watched one of your music videos. I think the song is "Only Jesus." I think that's the name of it. You're in a garbage, a trash, junkyard, and the lyrics are, "I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't care if they remember me. Only Jesus." Right. So when I had heard that, yeah, so good. And when I had heard that, and I see the cut. I don't know if that's on all your stuff, but the crown that's kind of broken or in the sand or on the ground. Yeah. And that, I wondered if that was what it was from those lyrics.
Yeah, I don't think every album. I should look that up. I don't know if every album, all the art, Yeah. Because like Petra used to have like some sort of guitar or space thing on their album. Yeah. I'm wondering if we have a crown everywhere. I haven't noticed that. I don't take care of that.
Petra. Oh. I love Petra.
Not as much as you love casting crowns, of course.
That's true.
That's great. Wow. Well, as we mentioned in our first round with you, we want to encourage people who are watching this. We don't want to just banter away, but you're on now. So I don't know if you want to do a bit of your stand-up, or you really want to encourage.
Right. See, the key word is encourage. We want to encourage people, right?
That's right.
I didn't want to bring the mood down.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, you were just talking about Revelation. I mean, that's a big thing right now. People are going, is this the end? Are we in the last days? Are we, what's happening? And which is exciting. And, I don't know about you guys, but for me as a believer, I've never had more opportunity to be able to share my faith, and be able to just encourage people. And so with that in mind, Juan, how would you encourage believers, and maybe somebody who's not a believer thinking, what is all this stuff? Maybe they just stumbled upon this crazy conversation. Are we living in the last days? And if we are, what can we do? And if we're not, then, please explain.
Yeah. Let's encourage people by talking about death. No, what's funny is I just did this as a kind of a encouragement Bible study on our Instagram. So Casting Crowns Official, follow us on Instagram. It was about, because I thought about the same thing. Somebody posted about is this the end times? And I got actually a little scared, so some fear and doubt crept in. And then I thought, well, how am I? So if I'm supposed to be thinking I'm a child of God, why am I not, why is this not a good thing for me? Why am I all of a sudden real worried? And it was because I realized God maybe showed me too that all these things are familiar to me, my family, my house, this place that we live, my hometown, being in Georgia and the pine trees that are out here. Those are all familiar things. And so that's, for me, I didn't want to let go of the familiar, but it's like inside, don't I have this longing for more? Don't I want all the evil to be gone? Don't I want everybody on the earth for there to be peace on this earth? And don't I want people to stop killing each other and to stop? So isn't that a good thing too? So I think when we talk about, at least for us as Christians, when we talk about the end, we're talking about the end of death. We're talking about the end of evil.
Yeah.
Because that Christ came to die so that we would know that he had the authority over death, and so that we would follow him into that. And another thought that I had about that, I don't know how good this is just yet. It was a little bit half-baked. We'll see how it comes out. It was like if you did know you were dying and you had the choice between dying alone or dying with somebody, like a friend, wouldn't you pick you'd rather die with somebody, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is, how much more cool would that be if you could die with a friend who had the power over life and death itself? It was like, so I was like, the scripture says, I'm crucified with Christ, and nevertheless I live. It's not he that lived, Christ that lived in me. That put that whole new perspective. It was like, if I'm dying, why not follow Jesus into death so that I can follow him out of the grave like he was. That was cool about Easter recently. We just celebrated Easter recently. I was like, that's what's cool about that, is that's what we should think about, is even though Jesus came out of the grave, we can too if we follow him into it. So those are maybe some weird thoughts, but there was a poem that I shared too by John Donne. You can look it up, and it's Old English, but it's called Death Be Not Proud. But at the end it said, death, you will die.
Wow.
Like, don't come at me trying to scare me, because at some point you're going to die, death. So that's an encouraging thought maybe to help you through all that.
You bring up a really fascinating concept about things being familiar to you, and God wanting us to loosen our grip a little bit on the familiar. And then there's that scripture that says, don't fix your thoughts, fix your mind on things above and not on things below. And that's interesting, because when you spend time on this earth, focusing on things above and not on things below, what are you becoming more familiar with? You're being more familiar with the things above, right? So then it's almost like it makes that journey of leaving this earth, you're more looking forward to, because it's something you've become familiar with, right?
That's very cool.
As opposed to being this foreign, because that's what it is naturally, right? It's this foreign, I don't want to die. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave behind. That's my biggest thing. I don't want to leave my girls. You know what I mean? And fixing my mind on things above is something that helps to become more familiar with my home. But this ain't my home, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
That's hard.
It's good to, this whole, whatever you call it, the pandemic, stay-at-home order. The good thing about it is it's kind of a reset and in your priorities, realizing, well, what is important in my life, and it's a great time to weed out the stuff that, I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't, that's not really important, whatever it might be. And then focusing on, wow, I'm actually spending time with my son, with my daughter, with my wife, my husband, whoever it is that you're with, and you're beginning to just have that reset. And I'd say this is a great time. And probably the biggest reset, as you were saying, Juan, is resetting with Christ.
And speaking of time, we are officially completely out of time. Juan, thank you so much for being here with us today, man. This has been a huge blessing.
No, man, it's been awesome. That's why I like doing this stuff, is because it makes me think about, well, especially now has been what we've been going through lately, and you miss it if you don't take stock of it and kind of process through it. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Good questions too.
Okay, Juan, God bless you, man. God bless Casting Crowns, and we pray blessings on you guys. God will continue to use you in a mighty way.
Yeah, man. God bless you guys.
All right, man. God bless.
Dude, take care, man. Say hi to Melody for me.
Yeah, man. See y'all.